Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our publishing and coaching services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Eric DelaBarre, author of Saltwater Taffy. Eric, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Paul.
Are you ready to get started?
Let's do it.
All right, question number one. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
Well, I don't know if I could keep it to one piece of advice, but I guess the overall message to any first-time writer is make sure what you're writing is awesome. Not just awesome, but ground-shaking. And, you have to have a subject matter that you're not only passionate about, but you are educated about enough that you can just kind of rattle the reader and make them lean in, because, we have a very crowded marketplace with our phones and our internet and everything else. So when you're talking about a book, and if you're expecting someone to sit down and read your book, you better make sure they lean in and want to turn that page. So that would be my first, I guess, biggest piece of advice. But the other piece of advice would be to make sure that you get some help, because you have to understand what you're writing is going to be a lot of times dribble, meaning that it's going to you're going to reread it, you're going to go, oh, this is terrible. But don't give up. That's the purpose of a first draft, is throwing everything on the page, and then you rewrite. Because when I was on Law and Order for 8 years, Dick Wolf would always say, nobody gets it right on the first draft. So just write, or as we used to say, throw up on the page, and then revise. Well,
I was going to ask if you could give our audience a little bit more about your background, too, because you have a pretty amazing career with everything that you've accomplished.
I have a very, very diverse and eclectic career. I started my career with Dick Wolf on a TV show called Nasty Boys, and at the time we had a pilot over at CBS, and it was called Law and Order. And CBS didn't believe in it, and the CEO of the network, Jeff Sagansky, said there's no one's going to want to watch a half hour of cops and then a half hour of law. It has to be one or the other. And Dick was really intent on, creating this show. So after they, shot the pilot, they tested it, and it didn't do very well. Dick got the help of Brandon Tartikoff and over at NBC, and that started the, relationship between Dick and NBC that is still going strong to this day. So I was there for 8 years, and I really wanted to be a director. So after writing a script at night, I kind of sat down and said, I'm going to go for it. And I quit my job, and I made a credit card movie for $78,000, which was really scary, freaked my parents out. But I ended up winning the Newport Beach Film Festival with it, and I eventually sold it to Lionsgate. They went on to make about $3.5 million from that picture alone. But it kind of started my career in directing and the independent world of filmmaking. Made a couple other movies for Lionsgate, more crime stuff, which I really wasn't good at, but I could direct, and I could produce and make something that someone's going to want to buy. And then directed a commercial for the American Lung Association and got a Best Director award that kind of pushed me into a new direction of short content. And then the world sort of stopped in 2008 when the Writers Guild went on strike, and I sort of moved into the world of books. And I became a ghostwriter for the Penguin and Random House, but back then it was just Random House. And I wrote a couple titles, 3 of which became bestsellers, which is great, but you don't really get more than the check that you get. So you could write a bestseller for somebody, but they get all the awards and they get all the attention, and you just get a really nice check. But during that process, I made a lot of connections in the world of publishing. And so when I finished a book for a client, and I could just say that this client is in the Guinness Book of World Records for most books sold in the world of nonfiction. But I gleaned a couple of things from working with this guy and working with Dick Wolf. Is people didn't say that this guy's book, or these two guys, they said it wouldn't work, and they kept going and they kept going. And look at Dick Wolf. They said that Law and Order wouldn't work, and he kept going and kept going, and now it's a $1 billion industry. So I just kind of really took that advice to never give up to heart, and so I sat down and wrote a kids adventure script. And this script, Saltwater Taffy, would later become the book Saltwater Taffy. And in that process, I took it to Random House, and they said, no, we really want you to change some of these things, these treasure tips that you have at the end of the chapters. They don't really work with what we're trying to do here. And it feels like at times you're talking to the reader. And I was like, well, when you have an audience that's 8, 9, and 10, and 11-year-old, I think that's a good thing. And I cliffhang every chapter to make, again, the reader lean into the next page. Because if you're not doing that, they're going to put the book down and find something else to do. So that's kind of like the trajectory. And during that time, I've written for the Boys Life magazine and episodes of TV. But it's kind of a real quick encapsulating look at my career.
I appreciate you sharing that, because you had such a unique background. I really wanted you to share that with our audience. So I really appreciate that. Well, let's talk about the tougher parts about getting published too. What do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
Look, here's the thing. They say it in the film world and they say it in the book world. Good content is always going to sell. Always. It's about the writing. I mean, when you're done writing, sit down and rewrite. And when you're done rewriting, sit down and write some more. The more polished your book is, and the readability of your manuscript is going to just vault you to the front of the pile, because everybody nowadays calls themselves a writer. If they have a blog or they're got followers on Instagram, suddenly they're a writer. But writing is hard, and writing is rewriting. So you get really one good look by an agent or a publisher. So just come out of the gate firing. And what I mean by that is your first chapter better be, oh my God. It has to have that effect on the reader. Otherwise, you're going to get a pass. Don't come out, lofting up softballs. Come out with a hard line drive right to the chin of whatever reader you got. And I do a lot of coaching for clients, and I have a client that she has a very interesting background, and she wants to tell a story basically about her life. And I said, well, it's a great story, but what is the one thing that made you kind of do an about face of and make a career change? And she started telling me stories and stories and stories, and through the process, she told me this story where she kind of freaked out one day going, what am I doing, in this job, when she was on a firing, a shooting range, and someone handed her a loaded gun. Well, I extrapolated that out, and, in the first 4 sentences, she said, it's like my life needed I needed to make a change in my life. I knew it was coming, but I didn't realize it was here until I was holding a loaded .45. So that right there is this device of storytelling that makes somebody sit up and take notice. So you have to make sure that whatever you're writing is engaging and makes the reader go, oh my God, I got to keep reading. Because again, the iPad's sitting there, or they might be reading your book on the iPad, but the TV's there, the kids are calling, your friends want you to go out. You gotta grab them by the neck and never let go.
Well, that's going to connect real nicely into our next question, too. And I know we were talking about this prior to the show starting, and that's, of course, marketing, which I know is one of your great strengths. So please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launches that has worked well.
Speaking. A friend of mine, John Kramer, wrote a really great book, 1001 Best Book Marketing or whatever. But John always said, if you're not speaking, you're not selling. Unless you're a celebrity and you already have a platform that is just, your followers are just going to just buy whatever you do, you have to get out and hit the road. People don't realize that, A Time to Kill, John Grisham sold that book out of his trunk. And, that is the type of tenacity you have to go after something and really just go where your readers are. Find out whatever your market is. My market for kids is obviously schools. So, I hooked up with a couple of book fair agencies, and they started booking me for free, which is part of the deal. You go out there and you start speaking. And, my first talk was in Westwood. It's at a charter school, and they brought over like one case of books, and I was like, one case? I'm going to sell 100. And they're like, well, we don't really see that in children's book fairs. But they called the next morning saying, hey, can you bring over some more cases? And I said, well, Perseus handles my distribution, so you're going to have to contact them. And well, we don't have time. So I ended up driving 4 cases of books over that night, and they sold out the next day. And they called the next evening and said, can you bring over 4 more? I ended up selling 240 copies. And that started a relationship with this company that every time they book me, there's a minimum of 80 books in the book fair. I've done over like 190 stops across the country. So you have to be speaking. It's like anytime, anywhere, you have to be able to just say, yes, I will speak. Oh, for free? Absolutely. You'll get paid gigs here and there, but in order to get in front of your readers, you have to speak. And for other marketing tools that I've used that have been very successful for places that I can't go and speak is I have a bookmark that I give away. I'm kind of skilled in Photoshop, so I create these really cool bookmarks that kids enjoy. And through overnightprints.com, I'm now like a platinum member, and I'll get like 5,000 bookmarks for like $80. And then I go to events, and every kid walks out of there with a bookmark. And usually the kids want me to sign the bookmark, so it's a program that's been very well for us.
Yeah, that's a great strategy with the bookmarks. You're actually, I believe, the second guest on our show that's talked about using that strategy, because those bookmarks, especially if they're very visual, really gets the attention.
Yeah, especially kids.
Well, you mentioned about going out and selling your book. So for other people that are on the show that might not be children's authors, they might be nonfiction or even fiction, what are some strategies that you would suggest to them to get out and sell their book? What type of events do you feel that they should be targeting, and what do you feel is the best way to do that?
Well, here's the best thing I can tell them right now. Get on social media and pay somebody to do your social media and start getting followers. You want, it's like, I really don't, my readers are 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds. They're not really on Instagram or Facebook that much if their parents are, watching what they're consuming. So I really didn't do that. But if you're going to write a book that is not something that you go into schools and market, then you're going to need a fan base. And to do that, you need to get followers. And, there's a lot of programs out there that will, do a lot of following, unfollowing, that type of strategy on the Instagram world that will get you a platform. Because a publisher's going to look at, it's like Pharrell on The Voice. He talked about it very clearly. It's like, look, these record labels won't come to us and say, hey, you got to work with this new artist. He's really great, or he's really great. Now they just come and say, hey, this guy's got, 5 million followers on YouTube, and he sang one song. Will you produce a song for him? So it's about the social media. So find a way to start gaining your audience, even if, you're upwards of, in of age or whatever. There are still ways that you can market and do quite well through social media and sell a lot of books.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Let's talk about your favorite book. So, what is your favorite book, and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
Well, look, there's a lot of great books that I love. Mark Twain, anything he wrote, I love. I love Stephen King. There's just so many books that I love, but not to sound egocentric, but I love my book. My book is I wrote this story because I, as a kid, was very active in play with my brother, and we were on bikes every Saturday morning, and we would be gone all day. Granted, the times have changed, but the idea behind Saltwater Taffy was to take a nostalgic look of coming of age and take kids on an epic treasure hunting adventure. And that was my goal, is to use all of these stories that I had from my childhood. I mean, we did crazy things. We ran around to our neighborhood and wore our baseball uniforms and said, this fall we're going to get new uniforms, and we're raising money to get new uniforms. And we raised like $50, and we went out and bought a radio-controlled airplane. And our dad found it, and we got in big trouble. We had to go knock on doors of every house, and we, had to eat crow and say, "We're sorry. Here's your money back, and we'll mow your lawn for a month." Because that was my dad. He was all about teaching us a lesson. But I found a way to take crazy stories of my childhood and weave it into a plot that would entertain kids. And we're close to 50,000 copies sold nationwide, so it's a good book. I love it. I love reading it. I love hearing stories of parents reading it to their kids. So I like my book. Which is why I didn't go out. When I started, when you go out and get quotes for your book, everyone wants to get another quote from a great author. Well, look, J.K. Rowling gets hit 50 times a day by people wanting to have her endorse her book. Get experts in your field. And what I did is I went out and got the experts in education, and that's Teachers of the Year. Not just really teachers, but people that have been awarded the distinction of a Teacher of the Year. That's who I went after. And 12 Teachers of the Year read Saltwater Taffy and said, "Wow, where was this book when I was a kid? I really love this story. It's a fun, safe story for kids." So that would be my last bit of advice to everybody, is to make sure that you are writing what you know and writing what you love, and then get people in that industry, whatever it is, have them endorse your book. Don't just go after famous authors. I could care less what another author thinks of my work. It's like that's called television. When you work in TV, everybody's got an opinion about your work, and it's usually other writers. But in writing for you got to write for yourself.
And for a final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
My favorite quote is from Star Wars: "Try not, do, or do not. There is no try." And Yoda said that, and it's a perfect piece of advice for everybody. Don't try and do something. Don't say, "I'm going to try and write a book." Say, "I am writing a book." Speak affirmatively and speak confidently about what you're going to do, and that's kind of the message that George Lucas put in the mouth of Yoda when he wrote that line. So that's my all-time favorite.
Well, Eric, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
I'm on Instagram and Facebook. The name of the book is Saltwater Taffy. It's on Amazon and everywhere books are sold. My website is Eric DelaBarre.com, which is EricDelaBarre. Or my email is eric@ericdelabarre.com or eric@iwillremember.com.
Well, Eric, I want to thank you again for being a guest on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
All right. Keep writing, Paul. Thanks so much.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how to get your book published with a proven system that works, grab a free copy of my book at getpublishedpodcast.com.